Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya. Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Bhavaraja Gacharya Astakar C.C. Mud A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sugho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shosri Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopita Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvatam Ki Jai. Gang Shamona Tulsi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Samavekta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Go Premanandi. All glories to some of the bodies, all glories to some of the bodies, all glories to some of the bodies, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutade Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachadane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyarisha Tadane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 1, Chapter 18, verse 28. Alabda trena bhumyadir asamprapt argya sunataha avagyatam ivatmanam manyamanas chukopaha. Alabda, having not received trina, seat of straw, a bhumi, place, adi, and so on, asamprapta, not properly received, agya, water for reception, sunrta, sweet words, avagyatam, thus being neglected, eva, like that, atmanam, personally, manyamana, thinking like that, chakopa, became angry, in that way. Translation: the king, not receiving any formal welcome by means of being offered a seat, place, water, and sweet addresses, considered himself neglected, and so thinking, he became angry. Purport: the law of reception in the codes of the Vedic principles states that even if an enemy is received at home, he must be received with all respects. He should not be given a chance to understand that he has come into the house of an enemy. When Lord Krishna, accompanied by Arjuna and Bhima, approached Jarasandha and Magadha, the respectable enemies were given a royal reception by King Jarasandha. The guest enemy, namely Bhima, was to fight with Jarasandha, yet they were given a grand reception. At night, they used to sit down together as friends and guests, and in the day they used to fight, risking life and death. That was the law of reception. The reception law enjoins that a poor man who has nothing to offer his guest should be good enough to offer a straw mat for sitting, a glass of water for drinking, and some sweet words. Therefore, to receive a guest, either friend or foe, there's no expense. It is only a question of good manners. When Maharaj Parikshit entered the door of Samika Rishi, he did not expect a royal reception by the Rishi because he knew that saints and Rishis are not materially rich men. But he never expected that a seat of straw, a glass of water, and some sweet words would be denied to him. He was not an ordinary guest, nor was he an enemy of the Rishi, and therefore the cold reception by the Rishi astonished the king greatly. As a matter of fact, the king was right to get angry with the Rishi when he needed a glass of water very badly. To become angry in such a grave situation was not unusual for the king, but because the king himself was not less than a great saint, his becoming angry and taking action were astonishing. So it must be accepted that it was so ordained by the supreme will of the Lord. The king was a great devotee of the Lord, and the saint was also as good as the king. But by the will of the Lord, the circumstances were so created that they became ways to the king's becoming unattached to family connection and governmental activities, and thus becoming completely surrendered soul unto the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. The merciful Lord sometimes creates such awkward positions for his pure devotees in order to drag them towards himself from the mire of material existence. But outwardly, the situations appear to be frustrating to the devotees. The devotees of the Lord are always under the protection of the Lord, and in any condition, frustration or success, the Lord is the supreme guide for the devotees. The pure devotees therefore accept all conditions of frustrations as blessings from the Lord. Translation: the king, not receiving any formal welcome by means of being offered a seat, place, water, and sweet addresses, considered himself neglected, and so thinking, he became angry. So this verse describes the cause of the king's anger. And we have a whole list of things here, like an asana and a little space, and some argya water and some sweet words. So these are common elements of reception or greeting a person. And they say the scriptures of Dharma for the grihasta. This reception is a very important element. The person who comes to the house is called the guest, or the atiti, someone who comes unexpectedly. It's not somebody you invite to the house, but someone who comes unannounced. So there's a certain procedure for that, and that's what this is. You're obliged as a grihasta when a person comes to do certain things. So you have to give them at least a place to sit. If you can't even do that, at least you speak nicely to them. Give them a place to sit. Of course, if you've got a place to sleep at night, that's even better. And then you should offer a seat if you have one, and some water. And of course, if you've got more than that, you can offer food. So these are activities that a grihasta is obliged to do for people. And if he doesn't do these things, he's considered to be very sinful. So that's why you'll see in India people, of course, it's a little arranged because they invite you to the house and then they want to receive you and feed you and do all this because that's a good punya for them. So the idea of receiving somebody and welcoming them and feeding them and giving them a room, whatever, this is a great punya for the grihasta. And it's like through all the varnas, it's there. From the Sudra to the Brahmana, they're obliged to do this. They have to welcome the person who comes to the house. Of course, it has practical value also, because in ancient times they didn't have any hotels, they didn't have any restaurants or anything. It was just people going on pilgrimage from one place to the other. So what is this to do? They could either cook for themselves out in the forest, or they could take shelter in somebody's house, and then they would welcome them and feed them, and then they would go off again. And of course, then we have the idea of the sannyasis, or the persons who are very spiritual, just wandering around, and the grihasta is obliged to take care of them. And by this one gets great pious merits. So that's a general code for all of the grihastas. I think in relation to that, Prabhupada once told the people, the devotees in the LA temple, that therefore you have to go out every day and you call, anybody hungry, please come to my house. So the grihastas would go out and call all the people. Of course, the brahmacharis would come and eat all their food. But anyway, this is the idea that you have to welcome and feed the guests in the house. So that's not even devotees, that's just regular varnashram system and the rules of dharma, a very important element. And the same as Prabhupada describes here between the Bhima and Jarasandha, even there, even though they were enemies, when he's in the palace, then Jarasandha is responsible for taking care of him. So he feeds them, he gives them a nice place to sleep, has kind words for him, etc. Then in the daytime they fight together as enemies, and finally Bhima kills him. So that rule pervades the whole system. And of course, even in the Kshatriyas and the Brahmanas, it is there. So the idea of this reception is very, very important, and everybody should know what that is. There are, of course, rules for that. Who is the guest? So this applies to not somebody you invite to the house; it's the unexpected person. That's why it's called atiti. Titi means like on the day of the lunar day or whatever. So atiti means it's unexpected. It's not according to schedule. Somebody just appears, and then you're expected to do something for that person. But then there's gradation also. So it's not that the regular professional beggars that you're obliged to feed them. That is not the case. This is the case of other persons who happen to disappear. And respect has to be given also according to the status of the person. So of course we get the varnashram status. So if a brahmana comes to your house, then the kshatriya or the vaishya or the sudra is obliged to do something, very much because the brahmana is the most respected. So within varnas, then the brahmana gets the most respect, and everyone is expected to welcome him in this way. And therefore when we see a Narada coming to Dwarka, then Krishna, he welcomes Narada Muni and washes its feet and does all this, puts him on a nice seat, and does very, very nice reception for him, because that's the obligation for the kshatriya to the brahmana. So of course then we have ashrama again. So the grihastas have to do this in relation to all the other ashramas, the brahmachari, the vanaprastha, and sannyasi, because the others don't have a means of living or shelter technically. So the brahmachari doesn't work, and the vanaprastha and sannyasi don't work. So they have no means of supporting themselves. So if they appear, you're obliged to feed them. At least you give them some food. So they're all deserving candidates. But of those, then the sannyasi is the one that gets the most respect, because he's the highest in the whole system. So therefore, if the sannyasi appears, one is very, very obliged, and of course the punyas you get from serving the sannyasi are all very great, so everyone is eager to get the sannyasi into his house and feed him. We see in Puri, when Lord Chaitanya was there, they were inviting Lord Chaitanya for, take the meal here at my house or my house. They had a schedule of which house he was to go to each day, because everyone was trying to get the punyas from welcoming Lord Chaitanya into their house. So welcome the sannyasi is the greatest punya there. But of course, that's external in one sense. So then higher than that, of course, is the Vaishnava. The Vaishnava gets the most respect of all within the whole society. And the more advanced the Vaishnava is, and he gets the most respect of all. So that system is there. Now, of course, on the material level we see, and then also on the spiritual level. So we know that within the Vaishnav etiquette or achar, one has to serve the Vaishnavas. The Vaishnav seva, that's one of the 64 angas of bhakti. Somehow serve the Vaishnavas, so you can feed them, give them a place to stay, and give them gifts, etc. So that works on a spiritual level. It's not a material punya at that point. It's a spiritual activity. As we see in Nectar of Instruction, there were 6 lakshanas of affectionate relationships of devotees. So one is feeding, the other is eating, eating and being fed and feeding. That's one of them. So that establishes affectionate relationship between Vaishnavas, and it's a cause of advancement. And then giving things also, the same thing. So it's not only a material type of rule, it also is a spiritual rule that we also accept within the Vaishnava society in relation to other Vaishnavas. So that's the general rule here. So therefore, if someone does not respond when you come to the house, then it means the person has no culture, or he's purposely being very rude for some reason, or he's angry with you or whatever. So Samika Rishi was a Brahmana, and he would be expected to know the rules. And Parikshit was a king, and he was famous also as an ideal king with no faults, so then he should have got some sort of reception. So that's, and he didn't, so he felt ignored or disrespected. Avagyatam. He felt himself disrespected, and therefore he got angry. So that's why Prabhupada says, yes, it's natural that he would feel like that. But on the other hand, we know that the Vaishnava doesn't expect respect, as we see, Trinadapi, Sunishana, etc., Amanina. The Vaishnava doesn't expect to get respect from others. So that why would Parikshit get angry like this? It's a little bit unbecoming of him. In normal cases, yes, maybe the king would get angry, but this was Parikshit Maharaj, who was a great devotee. So devotees don't get angry if they're not respected. They don't care. So why would he get so upset by this? And particularly because Samika Rishi was a Brahmana and Parikshit was Kshatriya, so he shouldn't really expect anything. He shouldn't expect service from someone higher up who was in the higher Varna. And yet he got angry with him. So it looks a little bit strange. The other point was also mentioned in the previous verse, that he was in meditation. And he had just long hair and whatever all over his body, like this, and he was in meditation. So why would Parikshit expect him to respond to him when he entered into the place? And respond to him in that way? It doesn't look, reasonable. Because Parikshit also understood that if he is in a meditation or a spiritual, he should not be disturbed. But yet he got angry. So then Prabhupada also explains the reason. Therefore, it was the arrangement of the Lord, it was the will of the Lord that this happened. So we cannot blame Parikshit Maharaj for his conduct at all. In normal circumstances we could, but in this case, no. It was not his fault, one, that he got angry, or even that the sage didn't respond. The whole thing is a matter of arrangement of the Supreme Lord. On the part of the sage, of course, then we could also maybe blame him in one sense, because he should have given some respect to the king, because the king was a great devotee of the Lord. So even as Samika Rishi was somewhat of a devotee, he should respect the king, because Parikshit Maharaj was a very great devotee, so he should offer him some sort of acknowledgement, at least give him some water. So we can say fault on Samika Rishi's part also. And then we see his son went even further by cursing Parikshit Maharaj, which is even worse. So that points out the bad qualities of his son for some reason. He ended up with very bad qualities. But anyway, we take this all as an arrangement of the Supreme Lord for higher purposes. So in this way, sometimes the devotee doesn't have his free will operating because there's some higher purpose of the Lord. In any case, whether it is the will of the Lord or it isn't the will of the Lord, if the devotee is put in these problematic situations, he does not act like this and become angry. He acts very calmly in all these situations. And that also Prabhupada explains in this purport, that the devotees are put in these awkward situations, and it may appear frustrating for them. But in these awkward situations, the devotees don't react negatively at all. Now, what is the positive thing they can do is they accept it as arrangement of the Lord. It may or may not, maybe karma or whatever, but whatever the awkward position they're put into, they accept it as the mercy of the Lord, somehow the Lord's arrangement. So that is directly stated in the Bhagavatam, that the devotee, when he's put into these awkward circumstances, he'll think it's atmakritam, self-produced. The difficulties are being produced by myself, not by the Lord, and he's not deliberately trying to harass me, and not by other people. It's not because other people that I suffer. I suffer because of myself. So that is a good realization, not only for devotees, but for people in general, when they are faced with difficulties in this material world. We can try to blame others, and of course sometimes there is blame. Other people do nasty things or whatever, but ultimately there's also some fault on our part, because we're the receivers of all of these bad activities of others. So the devotee becomes introspective and understands that there's a law of karma operating. And even if he's not a devotee, still, if he can appreciate the law of karma, this will help him overcome the, let's say, the frustration with the situation. Because in many situations we can't do anything about it. We can't do anything about the virus that's around. You can't do anything. It pops up here, pops up there. You really can't control it. We can do something, of course, of precautions, but we can't even predict when that would happen in the first place. And then who knows? A few years later, another one will come. We don't know. Or not just virus, tornado, hurricane, whatever. These things come. We cannot predict. So, of course, in these situations, everybody suffers, but who do we blame for that? I can't really blame anybody for the weather. But, of course, probably we can. We blame ourselves. If we produce the bad weather by the way we cut down the trees or whatever like this, or pollute the ocean or whatever, we can blame ourselves in that sense also. So even if we don't take the law of karma, at least we take the law of environmental reaction. Then we can understand that we're the cause of our suffering that way also. And with this overpopulation, what is that caused by? It's caused by ourselves also. We produce more children, therefore we're overpopulated or whatever. So in many ways we can see there's a human factor here, and if we conduct ourselves properly, we can minimize our problems. So that's at least what the Varnashram system does. It minimizes the possibilities of irregular disturbances from nature, from animals, from other human beings, right? Following certain rules of sense control. And therefore your karma is less, and therefore your suffering due to natural disasters, wars, and all this becomes much, much less. And therefore we don't have to blame other people. So in other words, our good conduct leads to a proper situation. Which is also what was illustrated here previously when there was the cow and the bull, and Parikshit came, and then the cow was the earth, and the bull was Dharma. So if you follow the laws of Dharma, the cow is happy, which means the earth flourishes. So, very simple rule. You control your senses, as much as possible, follow the rules of Dharma, then Earth will give products properly. Proper weather, proper food, proper rain, whatever. So in other words, there's a good response from the environment, from the earth or whatever, because of the conduct of the human being. If they follow rules and they control their senses and don't become extravagant, etc. Very basic principle. It doesn't even involve concept of God even. Just accept that this is something. Of course, more sophisticated, we understand there's a law of karma at work as well, which is an extension of that, an explanation for that, how that operates. So for people in the material world, this is one way of facing the problems we have in this world. We have to understand that it's not others' fault, but we have a factor. We are part of the cause of the problem ourselves. So that may operate on a big level, and also on an individual level with all the events of our life. So that's why it says Atma Kurtam, self-caused situation. And taking it more in the scripture where we say if the law of karma operates, so I do a sinful activity, I get a bad result. I do a punya, I get a good result. I don't suffer. But more than just saying it's the law of karma, the devotee says, this is the mercy of the Lord. So it's the law of karma, but the law of karma is the mercy of the Lord. So the devotee accepts that the law is just. The Lord has made a law which is giving him what he deserves. And that what he deserves is not for his suffering, but for his rectification, for his improvement. So in other words, the rectification means that we don't do the same sinful activities again. That's what it means. So therefore we improve our character. So if we're suffering, then we have to change our qualities. We have to change our activities, etc. That's the whole message. So that opportunity to change by the suffering condition is mercy. Mercy of the Lord. Of course, it's indirect in the law of karma, but it's another mercy of the Lord. So in other words, that misery in life or failure in life is an opportunity to realize that we should change ourselves, change our activities, change our qualities, and then things can become completely different. So we're the cause of the suffering. We're also the cause of getting out of the suffering by changing our activities. So that operates for the people in the material world also. They have to take a responsibility for their activities, and if they do realize that, they can actually improve their life. The other point, of course, is that beyond that, the devotee does something else extra, which the people in the material world won't do, even if they realize the law of karma. That is, the devotee performs devotional service. So that continues in spite of all the difficulties that he has, and he doesn't waver in his faith at all. And he continues not thinking ill of the Lord and thinking the Lord is trying to take or cruel or whatever. He takes it all as mercy, and he goes on enthusiastically performing bhakti. So that's what the devotee does. What is the final result? The devotee gets the mercy of the Lord. That's the result. So this is what Bhagavatam says. He's the Doyabhak. He is the rightful claimant of the mercy of the Lord. Bhak is an inheritor, technically inheritor. Like the children inherit the properties of the parents.